Hi everyone, and welcome to our webinar today about how DevOps and FinOps can work together to actually cut the cloud cost. A quick introduction about ourselves and about Naviteq. So Naviteq is a DevOps service company. We provide DevOps and cloud solution to tech companies in Israel and the EU. Greg here is our head of DevOps. I'm Elad, CEO. Our special and dear guest today is Dvir Mizrahi, VP FinOps of Weave AI and a FinOps activist. A bit about our agenda today. So we will ask, why is cloud cost optimization still broken? We will talk about the role of automation in FinOps and about key takeaways and best practices. We will have a live demo of Weave AI, and of course, we will leave some room for Q&A. So Dvir, welcome to our webinar today. Can you please tell us a bit about yourself and about Weave?
Hi everyone, I'm super excited to be here. And my name is Dvir. For the last 8 years, I've been in the FinOps space, the head of financial engineering at Wix. 6 months ago, I joined to Weave, which is a tailor-made automation platform in the FinOps area. I'm a subject matter expert in AWS Cloud Financial Management. I have 3 certifications from the FinOps Foundation, and I'm super excited to be here. So thank you so much for having me.
Greg, please tell us a bit about yourself.
Hey everyone. So my name is Grigory. Everybody calls me Greg. I'm fine with both. I am head of DevOps at Naviteq, and I've been working in IT since, I don't know, 2008, 9, a lot already. Been a junior sysadmin, ended up head of DevOps at Naviteq. And all of that time, part of my work was connected to the cloud cost optimization, and not only cloud cost, but in general. So I have a lot of subject matter to talk about. So let's go straight to the question, why cloud cost optimization is still broken. I believe in that because there are several things, like gaps between identification of the waste, execution of the waste elimination of the cost optimization actions, and the control of the results. And it exists because there is at least 2 parties in these activities. There is like a FinOps party and whatever party which is executing it. Let's call it a DevOps party. The FinOps activities never were like a loved thing for DevOps engineers. They don't really like passionate about it. They passionate about building things, about like propelling the business forward with like building, I don't know, CI/CD infrastructure for the company, and like cleaning up stuff, finding whatever the waste is and optimizing it. It's not that like interesting for them, let's say it this way. If we divide it for 2, let's say small business and big business problems. So if it's a small startup, waste identification is for sure a burden on top of the infrastructure team. You don't have a dedicated FinOps engineer or whoever who's responsible for looking for that and eliminating it. And you have to squeeze it into the sprints or whatever the way you're working. You have to dedicate time into it. You have to iterate over it. You don't have like a continuous process. You have to build it, or you just have, I don't know, a quarterly procedure of reviewing your costs, finding whatever is a waste, eliminating it, and coming back to it like in the next quarter. And like there is a resistance because engineering team has goals. They want to deliver features, onboard new customers, and so on and so forth. And if we move to like a bigger enterprises, you may have, or you already have a FinOps engineer, or maybe several engineers, a team of them. But then you face an issue of a gap between identifying the waste and executing the remediation for it. Because nobody is going to grant you permissions just to slash everything, like, I don't know, remove unused EC2s, change disk types, change, I don't know, instance types. that is
And
a
for
burden.
good reasons,
Yeah, go
right?
ahead. Yeah, of course, of course. But like there is a gap between execution and identification and how it's bridged usually. There is a ticketing system. I am as a FinOps engineer, I go identify whatever, build reports, dashboards, and then I take results of it and create a ticket. And Jira, Linear, whatever you are using. Now it is a turn of the DevOps team, infrastructure team, whatever you call it, to work on that. And we have a loop of like identifying, bringing that to the execution team, then controlling the results, then up again. And in that loop, you have friction because, again, if they are planning their work, you have to convince them to prioritize it. So you have to convince business that this is more important than delivering feature X or whatever. So you have a friction there.
Greg, may I just add
Go ahead.
something small?
Yeah.
I think what you described is also the best case scenario, right? But when FinOps
Oh,
engineers
yeah.
coming with the actual waste data, and then you have to drive engineering for action. I mean, most like the common case would be like, you're costing too much, do something, right? And which create that
Yes,
challenge and
yes.
create this. I mean, this is the main friction when they don't really bring data to the table and you don't really know what is expected from the engineering team, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So naturally, we can move to a second part of this problem, the remediation. For the engineering team, you can take two approaches. Like you can manually address whatever was discovered and pushed into your whatever sprint to be remediated. Or you can build automations. So let's assess the first problem, manual. It doesn't scale. Well, actually it scales, but it's a linear scale based on the headcount, which is dedicated to that task, right? And if we're talking about big enterprises, it will not work. Like, if we're talking about building the automation, we are falling into the classical engineering problem. Like, you either look for a implementation already which exists, or you build your own. And depending on what your team is using, Python, Bash, Golang, Rust, not judging, just that you're going to build a bit, but you're going to build it with the tools you have, with preferred way, and now you have to maintain it. Whatever changes you have in your system, and unless the company have closed a month ago, probably you have changes constantly. You have to update your automation in order to eliminate whatever waste you are generating, identifying. So now you have the cost of maintaining that solution added to the calculation. The other part of it is that in order to build the automation which is remediating the issue, you have to provide to that automation the input, which will be a result of identification of the issues. So now you need to build an automation which is identifying the issues, building you a specific, I don't know, CSV or whatever data format which is suitable for your automation, which will be going and making changes, deleting, resizing, whatever. Now you add up on top of this the approval process, because probably there is a high chance that you have to approve the changes the automation is going to do, because suddenly you may break something by just blindly trusting into the judgment of the reporting tool and execution of the automation. So now you have three parts of it. And the one more part is now you have to visualize the results of it, because like looking through a CSV is not the most pleasant thing. So essentially, in order to mitigate the waste in the cloud, you are building a reporting, mitigating, approval, and visualization tool by yourself, for yourself. And now you have to maintain it. You can have half measures of it. You can, of course, you can build a simpler, whatever solution. But anyway, there's always a trade-off of how good the solution you are building is versus how much time you're investing into maintaining it and how big results you get with it. So naturally, it moves us to the next issue, is the limitation of right now existing discovery tools for DevOps, solely for DevOps. We're still talking about DevOps team maintaining all of that because execution is still on their side. You have, let's say, TerraCost, a great tool which can give you predictions on how much your infrastructure will cost you when you are running a plan, let's say. But the problem there is that there is no waste identification. It just knows that you're going to create X amount of resources, which cost from the AWS API query this amount of money. That's it. It will not tell you that actually you should be using this type of instance instead because it's cheaper, or you should change the disk type, or you should do this and this. There is no recommendation for it. You can use other tools which give you visibility on your cloud costs, but they are not connected with, let's say, your infrastructure as code. You just know that this group of resources cost you this amount of money. But what manages those resources, how to address it, you will know. You will not know. You will have to have a human connecting those data and the infrastructure as code or whatever you're managing that resources with. So this brings us to the problem of the overload with the data. Like, you may know everything about your cloud costs, like per whatever this instance costs to us, this disk costs to us. But if you are operating on a bigger scale, now you face an issue of having like hundreds of resources, which you now need to make a judgment, like, are they needed or not? And another problem is that now you have, actually, it's not another, I mentioned it, like a cost of implementation grows proportionally to the size of the company if you are addressing it through your internal resources with either it's manual or automation, because there's a variety of resources you can automate the remediation for. So all of that results with the fact that DevOps teams are engineering, like infrastructure teams, are facing the task of working on cloud cost remediation, waste reduction, and the tools which are given by the community to the DevOps, they are not designed for that. We don't yet have a tool that will be solving that issue, like, and I can just check out it from GitHub. And infrastructure automation tools do not really help us with that. They have some insights, they may give us something, but it's not built for waste reduction. It's built for other purposes, like estimating how much resources for this team or whatever branch will cost us. It will not tell you that this is amount of waste packed into those resources. So all of that brings us to the way that DevOps and FinOps can interact. So the need for a tool which will be combining the identification and automation of the remediation together with visualizing all of that and with built-in approval mechanisms, which will be allowing to control whatever the automation tool is doing. So naturally, it's time to hear what Dvir can say about his view on this problem.
Perfect. So first of all, again, thank you so much for having me. Before we talk about the tooling and use specific tools and everything like that, I want to talk about the approach. And I really agree with what you just said, Greg, about the people finding themselves forgetting that FinOps is a combination of two words. It's financial and operations. And mostly what people are focusing in this practice, at least from based on conversation that I'm doing, It's mostly on the financial aspect of that practice. So you said incorrectly, most of the time people are focusing on creating the dashboards to see how much things cost. They can tell you how much the resource is actually costing and on which level, tagging strategy and creating visualization about their actual spend in the cloud environment, which is important, right? But if we'll move, I want to give you some context, not my context as a FinOps practitioner, but based on the FinOps Foundation survey. It's called the State of FinOps, and they're doing that yearly. It's a survey that is being sent to multiple companies, multiple practitioners around the world, and they're answering what is the key challenges, key priorities, where the focus should be in FinOps, what's new in FinOps, and what is important with each criteria that they are checking. And the cool thing about it, until up to 2023, the main key priority or the main thing that FinOps practitioners wanted to focus on was cost observability or a derivative of costs or financial metrics. And in 2024 and 2025, and it's by far, as you can see from the graph, the first correct priority, regardless of any company size, from $0 spend in the cloud to more than $100 million spend, is reducing waste and workload optimization. And I believe that the market shift, and again, it's not an individual survey, it's a global, across the board, with thousands of responses, saying what the key priorities in the FinOps practice. And they're saying that we have a problem, or we need to focus more on workload optimization and waste reduction. So when Greg talked about friction between the FinOps team that's saying you're costing us too much, or as I said, the best case scenario, they actually bring recommendations or data to act on, most of the time, the scale, or like you need to look at those 10,000s of resources and understand what we need to do with them. And I think it creates a lot of friction from the development teams, as Greg said, that they want to focus on building and not maximizing the value of cloud spend. Additionally, when we're talking about workload optimization and waste reduction, as well as, if you can see in the middle, enabling automation, that is still kind of new approach into how to implement FinOps as a practice. If we'll move to the next panel in the survey, we can actually see increased priority in the automation. Perfect. So when we see the enabling automation every year, and that is, you can check me from 2021 to 2025, and the 2025 survey was just released, I think, 3 weeks ago. And if you'll see from 2021 to 2025, the approach is enabling automations keep increasing in priority. I believe that the State of FinOps 2026 will show an actual increase to be one of the top of priorities for FinOps practitioners in their practice. And the reason why I give you all this context between the key priority of workload optimization and cost reduction and increased value in automation is because a lot of practitioners understand that for the sheer scale of cloud spend, regardless of the technological stack that you're using, as Greg said, when assumptions meet reality, we only know to calculate the actual cost, but we don't understand how to move to waste. And that creates friction because the DevOps team or the engineering teams are trying to understand what the importance is and what the value in what they're doing, versus the FinOps is trying to reduce the bottom line and to mitigate the financial impact of the company. Perfect. So we talked about workload optimization, we talked about automation and increased automation, but we didn't touch enough why cost monitoring alone isn't enough. And I believe that reason is because FinOps needs action. And if you'll come to your team and say your workload is costing $200 or $20,000 per month, I mean, what would be the relevant questions later? Like, how do you optimize this workload, and based on which data? Now, there is a difference in bringing this data to the engineering teams and reviewing it together than asking them to go and investigate their workloads themselves. So the ability to bring data, to be part of the common language, to be part of the technical terms and understand what the technical stack is, it's becoming a more necessity in the FinOps space because people are coming from the financial side. Most often than not, they're not able to move the needle and change the practices or build this cultural change from the financial side. They need to atone or adjust their language with the FinOps engineer with the DevOps engineer and the developers in order to talk the same language about value and measurements. And they need to understand what kind of data points they need. And knowing how much things cost is great, but as Greg said, as a DevOps, as a technical person, you want to understand like what can I do about that? Like where my focus should be, what can I measure in order to understand where the waste is? So instead of talking with waste with the cost terminology, we should probably move to waste terminology and focus solely on waste. I mean, dashboards are great and all, and they show you a trend overall. But if you need to go inside and investigate where your trends are and where you need to focus, what the changes in the environment and what caused them, it becomes a very operational challenge. And again, as I said, people focus on the financial aspect and less on the operational side. And I think that why automation is the future, and again, I'm biased because I'm working in an automation platform, but I've been talking for the last 4 years about the need to scale in automation, and I've built my own tools. So everything I'm saying now, you can already implement yourself in some capacity. So you can, even you don't need background in development, you can just go to your favorite AI helper and ask, can you write me a code to Lambda to scan my EC2 instances CPU utilization? So that's something that you can do now. The ability to scale it, maintain it, as Greg said, it's manpower and hiring the relevant people to do that job. So it's a trade-off. And I think that automations are the key to solving most of FinOps problems, from investigation to operational overhead and gathering data in order to drive action with the engineering team. I think this is the future, and we can't really do manual labor at that aspect. And I think the cool thing about it is that there are two areas where the FinOps engineer should work. And I think we maximize the value and rate optimization. So for those of you who don't know, the cost of the cloud, like the equation is rate multiplied by usage equal cost. And the rate aspect is how to work with reservations and how to work with EDPs and private pricing. And I think a lot of FinOps engineers really mastered this area. But regarding the usage, we're still developing new tools and we're still developing new methodologies into how to optimize our when assumptions meets reality, like how to optimize a workload that was built under a specific assumption, and now it's actually costing us much more than we anticipated, and it creates a problem and an impact with our monthly budget. So just to give you again, you can develop it any way you like, but I just want to show you like a quick example of how automation can solve our issue. And if that's okay, I'm going to share my screen. Give me 1 second. And I want to show you a really quick automation that you can implement yourself in your environment. And the idea is that this is a very simple automation to run. And if you're requesting a DevOps engineer to do so, it will probably like, I'll put it in the next sprint or something. So this is where automation really help us, because first of all, it's not related to IAC or infrastructure as code. It's something that you can implement in your own environment now. And the idea is to discover elastic IP addresses that are not that are not attached to any instance. And for those of you who don't know, the hourly charge for in-use or not in-use elastic IP is $0.0005 dollars per hour, which sums to around $45 per year. And the idea here is that in larger companies, you have a lot of elastic IPs that are not used. And for this instance, I created 3 addresses in my dev account. And what we're going to do is we're going to run discovery. Again, you can run the discovery however you like. It's not a demo for a demo. It's a demo to show you like how automation can help you achieve your goals. And the idea is if we run this workflow and check all the detached addresses, let's run it. And the idea is when we execute this workflow, it will scan all our environments, all our accounts, and get all the relevant Elastic APs that are detached and costs us money without any reason at all. And the reason why automating this specific use case is very beneficial is because it reduces a lot of the friction with the DevOps team. Now, I'm not talking about remediation, but if I'm already able to bring that list of Elastic APs into the DevOps team and say, listen, we scan the environment, those are the IPs that are not attached to any resource. Can you please decide what you want to do with them? It changes the conversation from, I see that you have increased costs in this specific account, in this specific region, under this specific usage type. And it kind of changes the conversation for things that they can understand. Like I have a measurable KPI, a key performance indicator, that shows waste that you can really easily mitigate giving the right information. So if I'm handing you the right information, the friction reduces to the minimum. Let me see how the execution went. Let's check where we are now. So we're currently running and scanning my environment, and we are expecting to see 3 cases in my platform. But again, you can get that code however you like, and you get those addresses that are detached. Once we have those detached addresses, what we're going to see is that that we can work on them. So what you want to do in your own environment is to take this list that you generate, and you're going to send that to your favorite DevOps saying, listen, I identified this waste and this workload. Now, where automation comes into place, you're probably going to send like 30 or 40 emails like that a day. And when we're talking about the operational overhead of creating those emails, those notifications, this communication with the development teams and with the DevOps team, part of the challenge is to understand what the status is with the waste that you already sent. Like, how can we track the ability have the ability to track who I sent it to, what kind of information is waiting on me, what kind of remediation is staying with the development team, what the status is. And again, this is how automation can help us do that by creating something like an approval loop. So if you can manage to implement your own way to track or to write on the side, like this is an email, send me a reminder, this is also a possibility. But the idea is that you can have the ability to create a feedback loop with the engineering team. So as I said, part of the challenge of working with the engineering team is the ability to understand what the status is, to generate the relevant data, to speak their own language and give them actionable items to do instead of just saying how you're costing too much money. And if we look at our cases, once the workflow is done, we can see those 3 specific addresses here. So we have 3 addresses. Now, how can we mitigate that automatically? So let's say I have the remediation in place. By the way, this is a recommendation from, you can generate this recommendation not by scanning your environment. You can also take that recommendation from Trusted Advisor in AWS. You can't control the parameters. It will generate it based on default values, but you can still get it from there. But remediation is easy, right? You can do it whenever and however you want. But now when we have those cases, we have a problem. Like I want to mitigate those. And we can do 3 types of automations. And I think a lot of people are being very afraid of automations in FinOps because they're saying, they're thinking like binary automations. Like I have something, I run automation, I don't have it. So we actually identified 3 types of automations that you can implement in your environment. So the first one would be a binary automation, like I have something and I don't have it anymore. And you usually see those with SCPs or like service control policies or some kind of organizational policies saying, I have a snapshot older than 90 days. It's a waste. I won't restore any data from a snapshot that is older than 90 days. So by default, they don't need any ownership or any other. By definition, they're deleting with their own scripting, with their own automation in their environment, any snapshot that is older than 90 days. So those are the easy remediations, like a binary automation. But you can also create a soft automation. And a soft automation is really cool because then you can revert back whatever changes you made in the production. A lot of DevOps engineers really love those automations because eventually, if you don't know what is the status of the resource, you don't know who owns it, what it's running, whatever. You usually, Greg, just correct me if I'm wrong here, but you usually say like, let's shut it down and see who screams, right? I mean,
usually, yes.
Usually, yes.
If you don't know the owner, like you just wait for someone to come and say, why you deleted my resource.
Exactly. So the cool thing about it, when you change the idea to automation, you don't really have to delete the resource. So for stopped instances, for example, you don't have to terminate the instance in the EBS. You can create an AMI, you can create a snapshot from the EBS, and then safely restore it based on feedback that you get. 30 days after you tag those resources and no one asked them back, just remove them. So those are soft automation, but what I'm going to show you now is a really cool feature that you can create, a feedback loop. And the idea is we want to take all the available Elastic APIs that we have, and we want to run automation to create, to send it as a feedback to our engineers. And I created a workflow beforehand. And what is going to run is we're going to get the cases and we're going to send it to Slack. And based on the items that I'll choose, it will remediate it. So for the approved items, it will delete the IP. And for everything else, it just exclude the those APs from deletion. I'm going to run the workflow, and that's it about the platform. I just want to show you the mindset of how to implement automations in your environment. And now that it's running, what it's doing is taking the resources that I selected. It's going to send me a Slack message with those resources and a link so I can change or select the relevant Elastic IPs to remove. Let me go to Slack. Let me move this screen. And the cool thing about it is now I have this Elastic IP optimization message and I identified it. And this is my dev account. And those are the IPs that I can select. So let's go to the approval item link. And let's say I want to delete 2 of them. And now I can just select the 2 that I don't want. This one I want to exclude. And then I'm submitting it. And that's the cool thing. Now, when we're talking about automation and the ability to create frictionless communication between the FinOps and the DevOps team, I think part of the things that are very important to notice here is that you don't send your engineers or your DevOps to do investigations on cost. And I think a lot of FinOps practitioners, by the way, we can see that the Elastic IP is deleted. I can stop sharing my screen if that is okay. Oh, perfect. And I think that the cool thing about it is when we're talking about friction between the FinOps and the DevOps team, when usually practitioners, what they're doing, they are being guided by the finance team, which is another vertical. They're like the gods that's saying this is your square that you can operate in. And if you outside the square, then it's a problem. And I think that the problem with talking finance to DevOps is that they don't understand the big picture. Like, why do I only have $5,000 a budget when my feature, I don't know, generates $1 million in revenue, right? And I think that the connection needs to be not just from the financial aspect, but to generate the relevant data, already bring them the data that they need as a wasteful data, not just you're costing too much money, but this is where you need to focus. This is what we need you to do. And put every stakeholder around the same table talk the same language and understand or build the mechanisms automatically to remediate waste. That's it. So I think this is where the DevOps and FinOps intersection is. Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree about that. And it's not only that you like there's a friction in convincing that DevOps should look into that, because one of the classical things I see in the engineering teams is when we have a challenge and we need to make a decision, are we investing time into like optimizing something to reduce the costs, or we can just throw money into it and like
Usually the solution.
to win a bit of time to deliver features that business needs, we will throw money into it. So one of the things that automation can help us with is to stop throwing money, just win without investing that amount of time by using predefined automations or reusing automations. And
or build your
the
own,
other,
right? Because that's what
you
I've
build
done
your
this
own,
week,
of course.
right?
Build your own. Just
can.
it's a question of like how much effort you are able to allocate into building your own automation.
Exactly.
And I want to stress on importance of the automation in this perspective. So if you are manually addressing the waste and you have a periodical process to do that, like I've seen that with like every month in the beginning of the month, like when we've got the invoice from Amazon, we'll look into it. We try to identify what is the most expensive thing for us here, and we dive into like looking what we can save there. Like maybe we can change something or remove something, and you are iterating over it one time after another, month by month. So by introducing automation, you are saving you time in the future. And another value of automation is that even though I've mentioned that on the big set of items, it is difficult to make decisions, automation through like short iterations, let's say you're looping through amount of resources that human can comprehend, which can evaluate, make sure that all those resources are really waste, and then move to another batch of approval. It can it can reduce the amount of errors you're making by just not trusting every action to a human, because human makes mistakes. That's totally fine. It's our nature and beauty of us. But automation will not delete the wrong elastic IP, even though you want to delete it another one. If you specify to delete elastic IP with ID 2, it will delete ID 2. It will not click on in the console in the wrong elastic IP. So automation saves you from the unpredictable mistakes that you can make as a human. And if we're talking about Viv, thing that I like is that we as a service company, as Naviteq, we have workflows which we can reuse with the customers, and they work in most of the cases if we're talking about AWS. They are like things which are common to every company. Everyone is using something like EC2 instances or RDS or Elasticache or whatever. And you can have workflows which are reusable for those types of resources. And you've built them once and you maintain a single thing which is used for multiple customers. So for us, it is a handy thing to use this kind of automation in Viv.
Just from my side as a key takeaway, I think that the most important thing that I've learned during my practice in FinOps is we need to shift from cost monitoring to waste elimination because it really directs the focus of the engineering team, so they don't have a lot of noise from the FinOps practitioner. They only focus on what they need to achieve and how to move that specific needle. And the more you integrate with engineering tools or engineering methodologies, Greg, you mentioned like a CI/CD process in the beginning, like how do you maintain your optimization cycle going with the engineers to reduce friction and create a culture. I think it's a very important thing to do to shift that practice left. And I think that we can also focus on what I mentioned before, like specific soft automations. So when you enable automations, you don't necessarily have to make it binary, like there is and there isn't, but focus more on your business logic, your business or FinOps maturity, and then you can really generate value based on the needs of the organization and based on your design of what automation should do. And one last thing from my end, and I think I don't know why it's not a challenge in FinOps or state of FinOps surveys, but for me, it's still a challenge as a practitioner and now as a vendor. Common language. I think this is the most important thing because eventually what you want to do is you want to speak the same language with the engineers and they want to understand where the value of their actions is into the organization. And I believe that a lot of FinOps practitioners don't deliver this aspect when they're requesting them to optimize workloads. So when you know how to speak with engineers, it reduces like 80% of the friction there is. So that's for my part.
I totally agree with you about sharing the common language. And I cannot stress more on the importance of the automation because like I'm coming from the automation world. For me, the automation is the only way of doing things.
Exactly.
And the like saved money is earned money, and something which I wish we can make better in the communication between FinOps and DevOps is that it's not the task you just have to do because like it's part of your job. It is important and it's interesting challenge to identify and mitigate the things which are wasting money for the company.
Exactly. Are there any questions from the attendees?
Yes, so we have some questions. Let's start with the questions. So, yeah, I think this one is for you, Dvir. What metrics or dashboard can engineer use to more easily track cloud spending in their daily workflows?
Okay, so as I said, I don't believe that engineers should look at cost dashboards. I've been very vocal about it for the last 3 years, but I do believe that there are dashboards that are important to engineers. So back in my time at Wix, what we did was create waste dashboards that took specific workloads to specific teams, and they actually went to monitoring services and they combined monitoring and usage metrics with cost and created waste dashboards. So for example, we had a Dynamo dashboard that showed provisioned IOPS versus consumed IOPS. And we had a EC2 dashboard with the CPU utilization and the memory utilization that we took from our internal monitoring systems. And we kind of aggregated like the usage metrics and the cost metrics together to show not how much things cost, but to focus on workloads that are inefficient. So when engineers look at their specific tag or a team looked at their specific workload, they could see a dashboard looking at how much cost impact it had based on the waste that they're generating every month. And the best thing about it was once they reduced that waste and once we created an action item, you could have seen like the waste metric reduced over the time that they remediated it. So the dashboards that I would focus building for engineers are dashboards very highly focused on their workload, their services, and combine usage metrics to understand how efficient that specific workload is.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. What I want to add is that in general, if you are talking about dashboards, the dashboard you're looking at should be an indicator of actionable item following it. Like you should build a dashboard which will be showing what you need to do, not the dashboard which is showing you just current state of things, how much money you are spending or whatever. If you are not making any actions from looking at that dashboard, probably you don't even need it.
Exactly. It just created more noise to the engineer, which create more friction. So
Cool. So we have another question. I choose like one of you. I think it's for both. So how can DevOps and FinOps team work together to make cost optimization initiative a priority?
Greg, you want to take it? I mean, your input from the DevOps side will be most valuable because I'm usually coming with a club, so it's not.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to say. Usually, the thing is that it becomes my priority when a business comes to me and says, "Stop everything, do this. It is important for us just to reduce this cost, and we don't care." So one of the ways of achieving it is creating a culture shift. So engineering teams should understand that the cost of the infrastructure exploitation is part like of a general effort of the company to earn money, because money you saved are money you earned. You haven't spent them, so the business have more money now, and maybe you have budget now to build something else. So it is first of all, for me, it's cultural thing. You need to talk and explain why cost reduction is important for the company, and you should motivate people doing this through challenges, because engineers, they don't like let's say monkey business, like going through the console, clicking one by one on EBSs, elastic IPs, whatever. They like challenges. So cloud cost is a big challenge, and you should present it as a thing that by achieving it, you will do something difficult and interesting. So you should be addressing it from this angle, not from the like, this is something we need to do, it is important for the company. It is only a part of it. The other part is motivating people to do that through challenging them by finding creative solutions to cloud cost optimization.
Or from the other side, and this is a true story, I talked with like 3 practitioners in 3 different companies that are saying, oh, if my developers in my R&D environment are exceeding budget, I'm just running on their environment AWS Nuke. So this is also an approach. But I think the initiative, as you said, is a lot of common language, a lot of talking about value, and to change the terminology to efficiency instead of cost, because it's very hard to make engineers care about costs. It's very easy to make them care about efficiency and running efficient workloads. So it's a good point.
So guys, I think let's have like last question because we're a bit running out of time. So how can we bridge the gap between DevOps and finance team to develop cloud cost management approach that aligns with both technical and business objectives?
I think it's mostly the company's strategy itself, because eventually when a company actually taking cost into consideration and they're starting their FinOps journey top down, for example, they kind of set the criteria and the holistic approach of how to approach the saving algorithms, like what we need to track, who are the relevant stakeholders. We're mapping all the relevant stakeholders in the company. We're sitting one time together, understanding like the different responsibilities and capabilities of each team, and then we can create like a process using a third-party framework or internal framework to start small baby steps. And I think the cool thing about it is you can build it based on your own culture and you're based on your own maturity. You can integrate with your internal tools for that, or you can use third-party applications for that. And the discussion, when it becomes not just a financial or a FinOps discussion, but a global company effort, I think it makes things a lot easier.
I totally agree with what you said. And on top of that, I want to say that you shouldn't be siloing or so-called FinOps engineers. They should be part of the product teams. They should be part of the engineering teams. They should live and breathe the same air as engineering is breathing. The common language, very important thing. And it's not only that FinOps should educate DevOps engineers or in their language. It should work vice versa. Like the FinOps engineers should understand the importance of those toolings and those solutions which our DevOps engineers are doing. So with that synergy, you will have better and more creative solutions.
Exactly. And I mean, most of the friction is about like right sizing or choosing the right tool, but there are obvious waste items that like idle resources, everything related to detached DBS volumes, to idle S3 buckets no one read from. Like there is no technical discussion to be had about, oh no, we have some kind of a technical debt to that specific resource. I mean, there are obvious ways to reduce cost immediately, but there are the ones that require more discussion, like right sizing and the ability to have like a proper SLA or to have better performance. So we need to create a better uptime. So bringing all those criteria together, like all those aligning the business objectives like finance, budgets, and everything that is limiting the development teams and the engineering teams to build better frameworks, and based on their framework to understand what kind of SLAs, what kind of performance criteria, what kind of restrictions they have in the environment, and to balance between the two. And I think it's based on the company's maturity, as I said before. So it's not a one plan to rule them all. We need to discuss it internally in the company and understand, based on their maturity, based on their culture, based on their technological stack, how can we bridge those business objectives with the technical objectives?
Cool. So, Dvir, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Greg, thank you. Thanks everyone for
Carlos.
joining us today. For those of you who might have missed or would like to watch it again, feel free to join our YouTube channel, to ping us like in every exiting media that you think about, and see you all on our next webinar.